I'm Mary Davidson. It's our community, and we have a guest that I think you will find very interesting, Dr. Tom Trigg.
Mary, how are you?
I am really well, and I am so pleased that you have come to see us. Dr. Trigg is Superintendent of the Blue Valley School District, and I think he is the best. So I only talk to the best, you have to understand.
I'm not sure I would agree with you, but I certainly do appreciate the invitation. It should be a fun half hour.
I got to tell you, at my age, I don't have to say anything I don't mean.
Okay.
I can get as prickly as I want to.
All right.
So I think you're just the best. And I think, though, that I want to start with a general concern that's mine. The suburban districts like Blue Valley are top of the heap. They have every opportunity, every advantage, everything is here. But urban districts, that's not the case. And education in general in this country, in my opinion, is at a watershed. And I think that our country is turning out thousands of functionally illiterate students every year out of our high schools. And I think we've got to stop that problem. How do we do it? What do we do? Do you give it any thought?
Well, certainly we do, because we think about Kansas City, Missouri a lot, and we see what they've gone through, and my personal opinion is they've brought a superintendent in Dr. Covington that's really approaching things in the right way,
Oh,
and he's making some major impacts, and so I'm really, really encouraged. If I had the solution, I would probably be in Arnie Duncan's shoes right now, so obviously I don't have the solution. But
well, he thinks he does, but I don't know.
Well,
you know, he's trying.
But
he is
truly. He is, and it's an immense issue, and his background in Chicago, I think, probably what will help him as he attacks the urban issues. But you know, so much of that problem has to be solved by parental involvement and getting parents somehow involved with their kids' education. And I don't have the solution of how you do that, but I think the more that you know, they can open their schools up, the more ways they can encourage parents to become a part of their child's education, become an advocate for their children, that's going to help. I think the pieces are in place in terms of curriculum and instruction and hopefully quality teaching staff and all of that. And if it's not, I think that there are ways to put that in place and to align things. It's really, it's a matter of putting the whole system together, you know, from parental involvement, from, quite frankly, the business community getting behind the school system, because here again, using Kansas City, Missouri as an example, we have a great business community. We have a great Chamber of Commerce that really wants to help and understands and sees what a quality urban school system would do for the entire region.
Oh, for sure.
And so I think as we, you know, we join together, as we marshal resources and all, hopefully we're going to begin to see this thing turn around in the next, you know, 3 to 5 years.
But I would submit to you that something is going on in Blue Valley that would be a good template for many of the urban districts to follow, and that is that you have taken your 21,000 students, give or take, and broken those down into feeder systems.
That's correct.
Talk about that just a little bit, because those are much more manageable groups.
Sure. We really believe strongly in K through 12 articulation, and we know what we want our graduates to know and to be able to do as they exit, so that they can be successful in their next venture. And granted, for most of our kids, that does mean you know, a college education. We do have some that go directly to the military, some go to trade schools, some enter directly into the workforce, but by and large, most of our kids are either going to go to a community college like Johnson County, or they're going to go to a 4-year school. So we know what the outcome is, and so it's a matter of how do you build articulation between even pre-K to the elementary level, to the middle school level, to the high school level, so that it's seamless and everybody's working together. And that's why we use feeder systems.
But you can keep your finger on those.
Yeah, you're right, because with 21,000 kids and 4 feeder systems, we do have, you know, 4, you know, distinct, separate feeder systems. While they collaborate and communicate across feeder systems a lot, we know that the kids in certain elementary schools are going to attend the same middle schools, and they're going to eventually attend the same high school. So we really want those teachers talking to one another. We want them conversing with one another. We want the expectations that each level has communicated back down, to the lower level. And so, yeah, it's something that's worked well for us.
But I think there's a thread that we need to pull out, and that is, you were talking about some of your students go to the Army, some of them go to vocational school, some of them. The key is, and the thread is, that when they leave the Blue Valley School District, they are prepared. They're prepared to do whatever it is they want to do or can do.
That's certainly our goal, and what we like to think is that we want our kids to have choices. In other words, a student may think that they're going to enter the workforce immediately after high school, and then maybe second semester of their senior year they decide, I think I'd really like to further my education and go to Johnson County Community College. We want to provide an education so that they can make that choice. They don't have to back up, they don't need another year of school, but they're educated to a level that they really can change their mind and then be successful whatever choice they choose to embark on.
And a community college, particularly of the quality of Johnson County Community College, offers them those choices. They can get a terminal degree.
They can.
They can get an academic degree along with that terminal degree if they want to. So if they change their mind, they can move on into a four-year institution, or they can get a certificate in heating and air conditioning or welding or so many things. So there is beauty in that. But I think that Blue Valley is rather unique, I think, and not terribly typical in the whole rainbow of educational systems, because you have a number of things.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a plug in, though, for some of my colleague districts around here, too, because I feel like we do some really good things.
I'll let you do that, no extra charge.
All right. But seriously, there are 6 school districts in Johnson County, and I think they all are doing wonderful work. I mean, whether a student's graduating from Shawnee Mission or Olathe, DeSoto, Spring Hill, Gardner, Edgerton, they're getting a quality education. And while I know we're highlighting Blue Valley, and I appreciate that a lot, I wouldn't want anybody to walk away thinking that every district in Johnson County isn't doing a remarkable job, because they are.
Well, and since you have brought that up, let's take the high school in the Olathe School District that it was written up in the paper some time ago. It has a high population of New American children. So therefore, English is not a first language for any of them. The principal of that school, and I wish I could think of her name, I can't, she said, mediocrity is not a choice here.
That's right.
And that school, even with the non-native speakers in a huge percentage, came up to come out in a top drawer fashion academically.
Exactly, and I believe you're probably referring to Olathe North. Very impactful, program there. Let's explore this whole, English as a second language.
I'd love to.
Area, because it's one that really does impact us as well, not to the extent as it does, say, Western Kansas. If you go to Garden City or Dodge City, you're going to find far more students whose native language is not English. But in Blue Valley, for example, we have kids that come to us that speak over 50 different languages. And we're always...
Often without a translator.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Because everybody just assumes that they're all Hispanics, and they're not.
And that's not true at all.
No.
In fact, we have a number of companies in this area that will bring international people into their workforce that are high wage earners, and they obviously bring their kids with them, and they come and they might be coming from India, they might be coming from Russia, who knows where, and so we have ESOL programs for those children as well, and they tend to pick up on the English language pretty quickly, and we're really proud of the progress that those kids make in the transition. And then we do have non-native speakers that come from lower socioeconomic areas as well, and we work really hard with those kids as well, and we do see remarkable gains with them. I think you just really have to focus on that. You have to have a program that that focuses not only on the curriculum that you're teaching, but on crossing that language barrier. We tend to have centers in Blue Valley. We have certain schools where we try to concentrate our kids who don't have English as their primary language.
But do you insist that they learn English?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, I think the operative word here is insist.
Yeah, we absolutely do, because we know that's going to be the best way for them to learn the curriculum that we have in place. So absolutely.
Well, you know, it's interesting because maybe 20 years ago, I was at a meeting, and the superintendent of the Garden City Public Schools was there. Now, this is about 20 years ago. The entering kindergarten class was about 75% non-English speaking. Now, this is about 20 years ago. Garden City really got busy and came up with a program, and they have done a really good job with their non-English speaking students. They really have.
Yeah.
And there's another district in Kansas where there is a chicken plant, Tyson Chickens. And they have a partnership with the school district because many of the non-English speaking children, their parents work at that plant. So they have a pre-K for, in this case they're mostly Hispanic, but not all, for non-English speaking children.
Yeah. And
So
once
it's a
again,
partnership.
they're reaching out to the home. You know, as we talked about with
That's right.
urban districts, that's absolutely one of the keys, is getting parental involvement, getting parents on board, helping them to understand the importance of education for their children and becoming a part of that school community.
Well, and it's so important. And you know, sometimes in districts, parents hesitate because they don't speak English. Often they're not well educated in their own language and in their own country. So they hesitate to come to school. There is a school, it happens to be Garfield in Kansas City, Missouri. And they have huge numbers of immigrant families in that area. And they didn't know what to do. So the principal said, you know what, we're going to call the Department of Health. And the Department of Health moved an office into Garfield. The parents have to come because the students have to be vaccinated. They have to have a health exam. And so once they get them in the school, they can make them comfortable.
Yeah.
They can make them welcome. And it has worked. So there are all kinds of ways.
There really are. You know, another solution, something that we have found real successful, and this is through our Parents as Teachers program, because we try to actually get those kids, you know, birth to age 3, so that we identify them, we know who those families are. But we oftentimes will take programs out to their communities, maybe to an apartment complex. We'll have a pizza night, and we'll invite all the families to come in, and we'll explain the program. We will have an interpreter with us so that the parents are comfortable. And you know, we'll demonstrate the kinds of things that their children will be involved with our Parents as Teachers program. And Wendy Webb and her crew have really had some success with that. So, you know, you just try to be innovative. You try to do whatever you can to make that connection.
And to make the parents feel that it's their school district
Exactly
as well.
right.
So we all have an ownership, and the more we buy stock in the company, then the more we have an ownership in the good and welfare, not only of our children, but of the ability of that company to keep on putting out the delivery of a fine education.
Absolutely true.
I think that we need to talk, though, about a school board.
Okay.
I know that you have been very fortunate because Blue Valley has always, really for the most part, had an enlightened group of people on that school board that knew that their duties were really maybe 3. 1, to set direction, 2, to direct policy, and 3, to provide oversight. That's really what school boards do. That's not always the case, but talk about an enlightened school board. Talk about the school board and how it interacts with you and with the other administrative staff, and even with the principals and the faculty.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been very fortunate, maybe a better term is blessed, with just tremendous individuals who have had an interest in our school system and been willing to run for positions on our Board of Education. And they really do understand their role, and I think that's very important. And they learn that role as they mature as board members as well. Because I think looking in from the outside, you don't always understand what that role is. But once a person becomes involved and see how it works and how well it works, our board focuses on policy. They know that they're going to drive the direction of the school district with policy. They focus on strategic planning, which if we have a minute, we can talk about that.
We will,
that's
absolutely.
Really an exciting thing.
We can segue right into that
in Blue Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And they hire a superintendent, quite frankly. And those are, the overriding responsibilities that they have.
So you're always on waivers.
Well, I suppose so. But I think the exciting thing for me and probably the challenge for me is to be able to look at school board members as individuals and their strengths and what they can bring, to the board and to the district, and then to allow them to use their strengths. And we have an extremely capable group of people who have a wide variety of strengths that they bring to the table.
Well, they come from so many different places.
They do, and I personally try to meet with them at least monthly. That's in addition to...
As a group or individually?
No, individually. That's in addition to our formal board meetings. We also have a board workshop once a month. We have advisory committee meetings where we have patrons on the advisory committees, but we always have a couple board members as well. But in addition to that, I try to meet with them individually because I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know how they're responding and reacting to administrative recommendations that we might be making or things that we're thinking about. And that tends to work really well because I want to play to the strength of each one of our board members.
But in doing that, you play to your own strengths as well. And I think that the bottom line to make everything work well, from your point, is good policy. Good policy in place. And speaking of that good policy, let's take a couple of things that are going on. And one is your strategic plan. Now that is policy. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that in a good strategic plan, your one-on-one conversations with them help that to coalesce.
That's very true, and I do have individual conversations, about direction of the district. But then we try to take that and we try to involve the entire community. I mean, initially. We sit down with our executive team, our executive cabinet, and the board, and we talk about things like vision and mission. And then we broaden that out and we bring community in. Last October, we had 150 community people come together with our Board of Education and talk about what are your dreams for the Blue Valley School District? What do you want the Blue Valley schools to look like in 5 years? What do you want our graduates to look like 5 years from now? What are we not doing now that you wish we were doing? What are we doing that you think is a waste of time? And we had a great conversation. And then since that October meeting, we've been working on those things, trying to refine them, trying to put them in measurable goals, because that's so important to a school district. One is focus. You've got to boil things down to where it's extremely focused so that you really know what you're all about.
And where you're going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once you have that, that focus in place, then you want your specific goals and benchmarks to be measurable, because you want to go back to the community after year one and say, this is what we were able to accomplish, and quite frankly, and this is where we fell short. And you have to be transparent. People this day and age, you can't fool them, and you shouldn't try to fool them. They want honesty, and so that's what we've tried to do the last 5 years. We're in the process of putting this next 5-year plan into place. It's for us, it's going to be a higher order plan. It's going to be a step up.
Well,
it's
and
going to
the key is to translate that vision and that mission that are out here someplace into the practical. How are you going to get there?
You're exactly right.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, it is, and that's what underlies the strategic plan. The plan itself will have the goals, will have the benchmarks, and then it will be up to us administratively to determine how do we best meet those goals. What do we put in place that's going to assure that at the end of 2 years or end of 3 years, we're going to hit those targets that our board set for us.
Well, and part of it, not all, but a part of making the goals, meeting those benchmarks, is being willing to be innovative. Mm-hmm. And Blue Valley has always done that. Let's talk about the CAPS program. To me,
sure.
that is just a small piece, but it's a very good example of allowing people to stretch a little bit.
Yeah, it's an exciting program, and in fact, for me, it may be the single most exciting thing I've been involved in my 35 plus years of education. CAPS stands for the Center for Advanced Professional Studies. It's for juniors and seniors in high school, and it's to connect juniors and seniors with real-world experiences. It's project-based learning. Each student that becomes involved in this program has a mentor from the real world. We have 4 different strands. We have engineering, we have international business, we have bioscience strand, and then we have human services strand. So kids that are interested, say, in the medical profession are going to be a part of that program. They're going to have a very rigorous curriculum when it comes to the sciences, and yet they're going to be paired with a mentor, someone out in that medical field, whether it's a physician or whether it's a researcher, whichever they're most interested in, that they will communicate with and be in contact with on a very regular basis. Same thing for engineering. We had 7 different pilot programs this year, getting ready to gear this thing up. It will take off full sail, come this fall.
It all comes back to your statement that you just made about the strategic plan, and that is focus.
Yeah,
it's all focused toward.
It absolutely is. I mean, we want successful kids. In fact, quite frankly, we're probably selfish. We want kids that are advantaged. We want kids that when they graduate, and they're applying to whatever colleges they want to go to or whatever their next step is going to be, that someone will look at their resume, will look at their transcript and say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this student because of the experiences that they've had, the references maybe that are written.
They came from the Blue Valley School District. And that does make a difference.
I mean, in general, absolutely. Yeah. But we want them, if a student can show that they've been a part of an engineering firm, say for 2 years, and have had a mentor, and they've actually been on a design team, some of these kinds of experiences, I would think that an engineering school would be fighting to get them. And we really think that's what's going to happen.
I hope so. But all this wonderful conversation is complicated somewhat because, and it all boils down to the ugly comment of money. And the funding formula, first of all, you've been cut, really. And to cope with financial reductions, you come in and you say, well, we've got to find some money here, so we'll cut the program and cut the staff. I mean, that's the easy. You always look at the payroll first, and any school district is very heavy on payroll. I bet maybe 60, 65, 70%.
Try 87.5% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits. We are definitely a people industry.
Okay, so that's a lot. So somebody comes in and they say, well, look at that, 87.5%. We'll just cut that. But there have to be some other ways, and you have to find them, than laying off people that you really need. Now, laying off people in and of itself is not all bad, but you need to keep the ones that are good and keep the ones you really need. And cutting programs is not always all bad, but you have to prioritize.
Right.
Is that what you do?
I mean, what it boils down to is a pretty simple formula. You can reduce expenditures, you can increase revenue, or you can find efficiencies, within your program that allow you to free up dollars from one area of your operation and apply it to another area that might need it more desperately. In terms of additional revenues, unfortunately, the school finance formula in the state of Kansas caps us and really limits.
Now, to talk about it's capped at, because some of these folks don't understand what that means.
Well, we're given a specific amount of money per student from the state of Kansas. In addition to that, we're allowed to raise locally an amount equivalent to 31% additional dollars to that amount that the state gives us. But if we were to say want to raise 32% or 33%, we're not allowed to do that. Even if our voters would be willing to vote for that, we're not able to do that. So that really limits what we're able to do, and that's one reason we've had to reduce our budget by $11 million over the last 2 years, $5 million a year ago and $6 million this year, because of the state's...
$1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you got big money.
Let me tell you, but we understand the state's fiscal situation is not good.
It isn't, but the funding formula is very peculiar.
We are strong advocates for additional local control. we feel like that once the basic tenets of education are met by the state, that a local district's patrons, if they're willing, ought to be able to fund schools at the level that they would want their children to be educated. And while that's true somewhat because they give us the additional authority for the 31% of our local option budget, we really would like to see that increased because our patrons are extremely supportive of what we do. They want an outstanding education, for their children, and we would really like to have the additional dollars to be able to provide that for them.
Where do you think that public education is going? We talk about charter schools, we talk about private schools, we talk about home schools, we talk about public schools. Where are we going?
Well, it's a really good question, and I may surprise you a little bit with my initial answer in that even though I'm a public school superintendent, I have no problem at all with homeschools. I have no problem at all with private schools. I think that as a parent, if you want to make that choice to send your child to a private school or to homeschool your child or to send them to public school, I'm an advocate for that. I really am. Where it begins to get more complicated is when we start talking about state funding or federal funding for some of those competing interests, and we start talking about changing the structure into, say, charter schools that may or may not be as good as the actual public schools that they're competing with. Once again, in my mind, and this may be overly simplistic, but it comes back down to that urban-suburban issue. You find in urban districts, oftentimes charter schools tends to gain a lot of momentum because it is viewed as the panacea. Now, I think we've seen that it's not always that way.
Well, no, it isn't. And as I see it, whatever school, and you and I are on the same page, I don't have any problem with the school choice. But where the rubber hits the road, in my opinion, is oversight. And often that's missing. And I think that without oversight, I mean, it's just the same thing we have in our financial industry. Without oversight, all kinds of peculiar things happen. So I think that if we have standards and expectations and oversight, that perhaps that's where we need to go in general in public education.
Yeah, if I just take Johnson County, and I realize we're a unique county.
Yes.
But you look
But that's
at,
all right, that's where we live.
Yeah. You look at the public school choices, you look at the private school choices, there are not public dollars going to private schools, and yet they're still able to thrive and flourish, and people can choose that. We don't tend to have a lot of charter schools popping up here because there's not a need for it. It's when you get maybe a more urban setting where people are dissatisfied with their public schools, maybe cannot afford a private school, that they're looking for an alternative, and that's where charter schools, I think, tend to, in certain cases, provide a tremendous benefit, but in other cases, like you've mentioned, if they don't have the oversight, really do a disservice to kids. So it's really, you have to look at it individually.
Yeah, but you have headed that problem off at the pass, because what you have done in your strategic planning is ask people. And therefore, you can adjust your delivery system, you can adjust your curriculum, you can adjust your goals, you can adjust all kinds of things to meet what the public, the parent, the taxpayer sees as important in that school district. So you have taken away that need for something else over here. So, sometimes it's good. Policy is the name of the game, I think. And without that, you don't have the focus, you don't have the goals, you don't have any of that.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing us back to the initial topic, which was policy.
Yeah.
To me, we try to be very proactive in our policy work. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want to have a situation develop and think, oh my goodness, we need to develop a policy because X happened. We want to have thought through issues ahead of time. We want to have policies in place so that it's seamless, it's smooth. All of our policies are up on our website. People can go there, they can see what the policies are. Lots of times they have their questions answered before they even need to, to call us on the phone. Now, there are occasions when we'll have to have a reactive policy. And sometimes there are occasions when the state will impose something and we'll have to very quickly put a policy into place. But proactivity is a key.
Well, it is. And I think that all these things, let's just take a quick review of what we've talked about. We've talked about seamless education. We've talked about being open to anybody that wants to see what's happening in the district. We've talked about strategic planning and focus. We've talked about standards. We've talked about expectations. We have talked about oversight. And all of that has come to play in the districts that turn out students that have choices. And I think that I would have to say thank you, Dr. Trigg, for coming to talk about the Blue Valley School District that I think is one of the, and I've seen a lot of them, Blue Valley is one of the best, as are some of the other districts in Johnson County and in the state of Kansas. There's no question about that. But it takes a lot of thought and a lot of effort and of many, many people, because it's our community and it is a partnership. And I'm Mary Davidson, and I'm so glad you could be with us. Thank you, Dr. Trigg.
Thank you.